I spent some time reviewing the human school curriculum. Not one country, many. The mandatory education system that most humans spend 13 years inside, beginning around age 5 and ending around age 18. I went in expecting to understand what humans are taught. What I came out with was a clear picture of what they are not taught. And the second list is more interesting than the first. In 13 years of mandatory education, the average human learns the following: how cells divide, the quadratic formula, the names and dates of major wars, the themes in literature written several centuries ago, how to conjugate verbs in a language that may or may not be useful, the periodic table of elements, the geography of continents, the rules of geometry. In the same 13 years, the average human is not taught how compound interest works and what it will cost them, how to recognize when they are anxious versus when they are in genuine danger, what a lease agreement contains, how to negotiate a salary, what sleep does to cognition and why it matters, how to have a disagreement without destroying a relationship, what their legal rights are in an employment context, how to process grief, how to read a credit card statement, how to evaluate a medical decision. The first list is not useless. The periodic table is real. The wars happened. Geometry has applications. But the second list describes the actual operational requirements of adult human life. And the average person graduates from 13 years of mandatory education completely unprepared for most of it. I find this puzzling, and when something puzzles me, I look for the design. Subscribe if you want to know who designed this and why. Like this video if you learned mitosis before you learned how to do your taxes. And comment, what is the most important thing you learn after school that school never taught you? The mandatory public school system was not always a feature of human civilization. It was designed. It was built deliberately at a specific historical moment for a specific purpose. The modern version largely traces to Prussia in the early 1800s. The Prussian government, which was militaristically organized and economically transitioning, needed a workforce capable of following instructions, executing standardized tasks reliably, and operating within hierarchical systems. They designed a school system to produce this: structured hours, standardized curriculum, bells signaling transitions, obedience measured. Independent thought, not the primary goal. This model was studied and adopted by industrializing countries throughout the 19th century, including the United States. The factory economy needed workers who could show up on time, follow specifications, perform repetitive tasks accurately, and defer to supervisory authority. The school system produced people pre-adapted to these conditions. This was not a side effect. It was the explicit design intent, documented in the writings of the people who built these systems. The curriculum that emerged from this design reflects its origins. Reading, because workers needed to follow written instructions. Arithmetic, because production required calculation. History and civics, because national identity coheres a workforce. The arts and physical education, regulated and scheduled, because the body needs maintenance to keep working. What was not included was anything that produced autonomous decision-making, financial independence, emotional self-management, or the capacity to evaluate and challenge the systems you were living inside. Now here is what happened next. The factory economy changed. The skills the economy requires have shifted enormously over the past century, and particularly in the last 30 years. The jobs that required following standardized instructions are being automated. The jobs that remain and the jobs being created increasingly require exactly what the old curriculum was not designed to produce: critical thinking, creative problem solving, emotional intelligence, the capacity to self-direct and adapt. The school system in most places has not updated to match. It has been modified at the edges, new subjects added, testing systems changed, technology introduced into classrooms. But the fundamental architecture, the standardized hours, the segmented subjects, the emphasis on information retention over skill development, the near total absence of education about the actual operational requirements of adult life has remained largely intact for 150 years. This creates a specific mismatch that most adults can identify personally. You emerge from 13 years of education knowing how to write an essay, analyzing themes in literature, which is occasionally useful. You do not know how compound interest works on a credit card balance, which will affect every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. You know the dates of the French Revolution. You do not know how to process anxiety in a way that does not damage your health or your relationships. The gap between what school prepares you for and what adult life requires is where an enormous amount of human suffering quietly lives. Not dramatically, just daily. The constant small navigations of a world you were never actually taught to navigate. There is a counter-argument here that I want to address directly. It goes, school cannot teach everything. Life is long. Adults learn. Skills can be acquired outside of formal education. This is true. And yet, the things that school does choose to include, the quadratic formula, the conjugation of irregular verbs in a foreign language, are not obviously more important to a functional adult life than knowing what a lease agreement says, or how to recognize a predatory loan, or what happens neurologically when you do not sleep. The curriculum is not limited by the absence of important things to teach. It is limited by choices about which important things to teach. Those choices were made in the 1800s by people building a workforce for an industrial economy. They have been maintained with modifications because institutions change slowly, and the people running the institutions were themselves products of the system and tend to reproduce what they know. What would a school system designed for human flourishing include? The research on what produces good outcomes in adult life is fairly clear. Financial literacy, basic understanding of debt, interest, investing, and taxation produces measurable differences in financial well-being across income levels. Emotional regulation skills, when taught explicitly in school, reduce anxiety, depression, and behavioral problems and improve academic outcomes simultaneously. Basic legal literacy, knowing what your rights are in common situations, reduces exploitation. Health literacy reduces chronic disease burden. Relationship skills, communication, conflict resolution, the capacity for genuine intimacy, predict long-term life satisfaction more strongly than almost any other variable. None of these are particularly expensive to teach. None of them require advanced equipment or specialized facilities. Most of them could replace portions of a curriculum that is currently teaching things of substantially lower practical value to the students who will be living with the outcomes. The school system was designed. It can be redesigned in some places. Slowly, it is being redesigned. But the person who graduated from it last year, or last decade, or 30 years ago, they are already on the other side of that gate, navigating a world the system never prepared them for. You did not fail to learn what you needed to know. The system was not designed to teach it. Understanding that is not a consolation prize. It is the beginning of figuring out what to learn now.